So today it's 3/9/26, I think, right?
Correct. March 26.
You did 25 yesterday?
Correct.
Okay, great, thanks. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhunam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavan Eshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 26. We don't have the screen today or any of that, or the pass around like any of those things. We're going au naturel today. Maitreya Uvacha Swasambhavam Nisham Yaivam Swasambhavam Nisham Yaivam Tapo Vidya Samadhibhi Tapo Vidya Samadhibhi Yavan Manovachastutva Yavan Manovachastutva Virarama Sakinnavat Virarama Sakinnavat Maitreya Uvacha Swasambhavang Nishamyaivam Tapo Vidya Samadhibhi Yavan Manovachastutva Virarama Sakinnavat. Maitreya Uvacha Swasambhavang Nishamyaivam tapo vidya samadhibihi yavan mano vachastutva vira rama sakinavat Maitreya uvacha swasambhavang nishamyaivam tapo vidya samadhibihi yavan mano vachastutva vira rama sakinavat Maitreya uvacha swasambhavang nishamyaivam tapo vidya samadhibihi yavan mano vachastutva vira rama sakinavat Maitreya uvacha. The great sage Maitreya said, Swasambhavam, the source of his appearance. Nishamya, by seeing. Evam, thus. Tapaha, penance. Vidya, knowledge. Samadhibihi, as also by concentration of the mind. Yavat, as far as possible. Manaha, mind. Vachaha, words. Stutva, having prayed. Virarama, became silent. Saha, he, Brahma. Kinnavat, as if tired. Well, the translation, the sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit him. Thus, having prayed, he became silent as if tired from the activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. So, responsively, the sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit him. Thus, having prayed, he became silent, as if tired from his activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. So here is the short purport by Srila Prabhupada. Brahma's enlightenment in knowledge was due to the Lord sitting within his heart. After being created, Brahma could not ascertain the source of his appearance. But after penance and mental concentration, he could see the source of his birth, and thus he became enlightened through his heart. The spiritual master outside and the spiritual master within are both representations of the Lord. Unless one has contact with such bona fide representations, one cannot claim to be a spiritual master. Lord Brahma had no opportunity to take help of a spiritual master from outside, because at that time Brahma himself was the only creature in the universe. Therefore, on becoming satisfied by the prayers of Brahma, the Lord enlightened him about everything from within. Maitreya uvacha swasambhavam nishamyaivam tapo vidya samadhibihi yavan mano vachastutva virarama sakinavat. The sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit him. Thus having prayed, he became silent, as if tired from his activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. It's interesting. We can kind of think about Brahma's situation, and we can also think about the situation of practically everyone in this material world. There's some differences and some similarities, of course. Brahma, he wakes up in a universe that's completely dark except for the lotus flower that he's sitting on. There's no other people anywhere, so it's no one else he can appeal to for knowledge. Still, there's this idea of being kind of dropped into the middle of something. You know, that's the way we all are. We're kind of like dropped into the middle of something. We know where we are now. We know where we'll be maybe tomorrow or the next day. We don't know where we came from, and we don't know where we're ultimately going. And we don't know the rules of the game either. That's interesting, you know. So, in some ways, Brahma has the same experience. Of course, he's infinitely more competent than we are. And we see that we only see a slice of what's going on. There's so much obscured from our view. Whether you follow the Vedic system or whether you follow science, you still only have a small slice of the mysterious universe that we live in. You know, in an English bhajan, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, man's life to him a problem dark, a screen both left and right. No soul has come to tell us what exists beyond our sight. So this is from a poem that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote called, I think, the Sharagrati Vaishnav, you know. Man's life to him a problem dark, a screen both left and right. No soul has come to tell us what exists beyond our sight. And so I was just thinking about this chapter, chapter 9. It's a pretty interesting chapter. There's a lot of really relevant stuff here. It's not hard for us as devotees to get overwhelmed. You know, Krishna has a way of engaging us 400%, and so we can get caught up in what we're doing, what we need to do, what we haven't done yet, what our obligations are. And this appears to be also Brahma's situation. You know, he's sitting on the lotus flower. He knows he needs to create the universe. But he's not exactly sure how to do it. It seems daunting, very daunting, you know, this whole business of creating the entire material universe. So Brahma is thinking, how shall I do this? And he knows that he needs to appeal to the Supreme. So of course we know the story. He heard the words tapa, he meditated, he tried to crawl down the lotus, that didn't work. Finally the Supreme Lord appeared to him because the only person who could teach Brahma was the Supreme Lord. There wasn't anyone else around. So, no other possibilities. And this is what Brahma actually came away with. Now, this is the same thing with us. We're in the middle of a setting. We're born as babies, we come out and wah, and we try to figure out what's going on in this strange place. And we know and we notice very soon that there are no easy answers. You know, we go to school, but nobody teaches us what's going on here. We learn about ABCs, we learn mathematics, we learn geography, we learn some civics, we learn, so many scientific ideas, but we never learn what's going on here. What's going on in this crazy place? We never find that out. Not in school, anyway. No easy answers. We didn't see ourselves being born, nor did we see the universe being created. So that's beyond our screen on the left. And then We don't see the universe, what it's going to wind up being millions of years from now. That's beyond our view on the screen on the right. So, mysterious place. We're like boats in the middle of the ocean in a fog. We can see the other boat, at least the hazy outline of it. But we don't know where land is. We don't know where we've come from. We don't know if there's danger ahead. We just kind of are here in this existential fog in the middle of nowhere. And most people kind of play with these questions a little bit and, soon give up. And what happens then is we discover, well, we can't understand the answers to the big questions, but we do know that right there is sense gratification, and that's good. So I'm going to go for that. So we give up answering the big questions, and we're happy with just the answer to where is sense gratification. Oh, that tastes good. I need to get some more of that. Where did you buy it? What is its make? Who made it? What store did you buy it in? How much did it cost? That's a nice thing to hear. Let me play it. Let me hear it. That's a nice thing to see. Are there more of those? What time will the showing start? What's the cost in that theater? This and that and the other. So we busy ourselves about immediate sense gratification, which is easy to get. It's tangible. We can do it. And after a while, we just forget that maybe there's anything else. So any wonder that we don't connect to anything deeper? We're happy with just this sort of superficial connection to things. And we never think about where we're going. So Brahma is in anxiety, but he understands there must be a Supreme, and he meets the Supreme, and the Supreme is giving him information and assuaging his difficult mentality, his fear of making some mistake. And he also, Brahma, is intelligent enough to know that in the process of creating and of being apparently the big cheese, the big center of everything, one can get a swelled head. And this shows big intelligence. Most people don't know this, that if you do wind up being the center of something or the master of ceremonies in some way, the chances of getting a swelled head are quite good, quite good. So Brahma, and he gets the assurance, as we'll see later on in this chapter by the Supreme Lord, that his difficulty in creating will be managed and that he will not become involved or entangled in this egoistic identification as the head honcho. So this is the nature of his situation. And, I'm thinking that whenever I feel overwhelmed, this would be a good chapter to return to, to read this. If Brahma felt this way, then certainly I can feel this way. And maybe this is a good chapter to reread and understand that the Supreme Lord says, no, everything's okay. Just continue and things will work out, and Brahma felt overwhelmed, and it's not going to be astounding that you feel overwhelmed sometimes. And what's interesting is in this little section, we see interwoven what in theology or Christian circles would be called doxology, praxology, and theology. So these are three big words, Theology, we all know, it's the philosophy behind the spiritual path. Where are we? What are we doing? How are we doing it? Who is the Supreme? What's existing? What's important? All that kind of thing. Theology, the theoreticals. Then we have something called doxology, which is praise. So often we see these big sections of prayers. So Brahma, he first off starts with the first 5 verses talking about the amazing qualities of the Lord Lotus feet. Then from 6 to 10, he discusses those people who don't get the mercy of the Lord's lotus feet. And from 11 to 13, he talks about the Lord's reciprocation. And then from 14 through 19, he let me see if I can get it here. He starts obeisances. So this is the section I'm talking about. He is doing his doxology. He's praising the Supreme Lord. So these prayers, it's not like the Supreme Lord doesn't know these things. He's not telling Krishna, oh, you are the source of all material and spiritual worlds. He's not telling Krishna that, oh, you are seated in the hearts of everyone. You are personally expanded as your original form, and yet you are also the all-pervading essence. And those who have no devotion to you can hardly understand anything. The Supreme Lord knows all this, but he is doing it as a kind of doxology or a prayer of praise, and this helps Brahma. And it's euphonious. It's nice to hear. It's pleasant, and it purifies all those that hear. Yasmaret pundarikapsham sabhyayam bhyantara suchihi. So we are told, Om apavitro pavitro va sarvabhastam katopiva yasmaret pundarikaksham sabhaya bhyantara suchihi. That in any circumstance one can be purified or unpurified, apavitro pavitro va, sarvavastam katopiva, or in any condition of life. One who, smaret, remembers, pundarikaksham, the lotus-eyed Lord, Sahi bhaya abhyantara suchi, he is cleansed inside and outside. So through doxology, through praise, we cleanse ourselves, and anyone in the proximity is also cleansed. And then we have praxeology, which is the whole system of understanding what kind of practice we should be engaged in. And by knowing what we should be doing with our lives, with our bodies, then this is also a part of the whole system. And if you not just study this chapter 9 of the third canto, but basically this is throughout Bhagavatam, that you will see this interweaving of doxology, theology, and praxeology. So to come to the deeper level, we can't just have glorification prayers and theology. We also have to do something, we have to do some practical activity. And so this then gives us the purification to, like Brahma, be able to see the Supreme Lord. So what's interesting too is that we get in contact with the Supreme who's hidden from our sight. No soul has come to tell us what exists beyond our sight. So only through following a process of authorities, we become able to not see through our eyes, but to hear through the ear where we are coming from and what the Supreme Lord actually is and how to achieve him. So that's interesting. Now, I thought, since tomorrow is Srivasa Thakura's appearance day, I'm hoping I'm not stepping on somebody's toe who's planning a lecture tomorrow about Srivasa Thakura. I don't know who's on for tomorrow. But it's very interesting. We often don't hear much about Srivasa Thakura. And I thought that it might be a good time to weave that in. It certainly fits in with the sort of theme of this part of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's interesting also to learn and read about the Panca-Tattva, Panca-Tattva-atmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavatara Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam. So we learn that there are 5, count them, 5 different expansions of the Supreme. And so we have the first expansion, which is the Panca-Tattva Atmakam. So, okay, for some reason my brain logged out there, but it's logged back in again. So, Panca-Tattva Atmakam. So, there are 5 truths, Krishnam, about Krishna, who's actually, we're talking about Chaitanya, Panca-Tattmakam Krishnam, Bhakta Rupa. So, Lord Chaitanya is Bhakta Rupa, the form of a devotee. So he is the original, he is Tattva. He's Vishnu Tattva. He's directly Krishna, actually. Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam. Swarupa is his first expansion. That's Nityananda, who is his brother, Balaram. Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam, Bhaktavataram. The avatar is Advaitacharya, who is Sadashiva and also Mahavishnu in one, both at the same time. Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam. Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam, who is known as a devotee, which is Gadadhar, and Bhakti Shaktikam, which is Srivasa, who is a Shakti. And he's also understood to be the essence of Narada Muni, or the Shakti, or the mood of Narada Muni. So this is Srivasa. Now it's interesting also that we have 3 that are Vishnu Tattva, Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda, and Advaitacharya. We have one that's Shakti Tattva, which is Gadadhar, who is Radharani, an expansion of Radharani, and then we have one who's Jiva Tattva, which is Srivasa Thakura. So Srivasa Thakura was one of 4 or 5 brothers, Jaladhara, Pandit, and they come from Sri Hata. And there is a story, actually, about Srivasa Thakura in Kavi Karnapura's Chaitanya Chandradaya Natakam. That's what it is, Chaitanya Chandradaya Natakam. There is a story about him. It's a drama, and the story goes that Srivasa was a very, Srivasa is explaining the story about himself. It's autobiographical. So he's explaining that I was a very haughty, very self-important, materialistic person. To the age of 16, I could not hear any good advice from anyone. I did not take it seriously. I was only interested in enjoying myself. And I was very self-important. And I ignored all the advice of my elders. I never read scripture. I did not have any interest in deities or the deity worship, all these things. And one night I had a dream. And that dream, a very effulgent personality came to me in the dream and said, Srivasa, you haughty, self-important egotist, what will happen when you die? You do not know that you only have 1 year of life left. And so what will your sense gratification, what will your self-importance do for you? How will you be saved? And so Srivasa woke up from the dream and he thought, yes, I must change my life. And he thought that I will become understanding, just like Brahma, just like us, we're talking about this. He realizes that I'm in the middle of this mysterious situation, life. I don't know where I've come from. I don't know what the Supreme is. But I've heard from the Vedas and from also authorities all around that this can be found out if one simply studies the Vedas and associates with advanced devotees. So he begins attending a sangha of Devananda Pandit, and one day he's, on a balcony, And he's listening to Devananda Pandit. And suddenly, he feels very woozy. He feels very, his balance is lost, and he thinks, oh, this is my time now. I will now leave my body. And he falls off the balcony. And he's thinking, now I surely must be finished. But actually, he doesn't die. Somehow or another, he's saved. And then he realizes that actually, somehow or another, it's by the mercy of the devotees of the Lord that I've been delivered and that I'm still alive. So therefore, let me take very seriously this process of Krishna consciousness. So this is kind of described in the, Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natakam by Kavi Karnapurna. And Kavi Karnapurna is also the devotee who is credited with really explaining and expanding this whole process of understanding the Lord in 5 features as the Panca-Tattva. Actually, it was described originally in detail by Swarup Damodar, but Kavi Karnapura made it very popular. He began to describe it. So, Srivasa Thakura, of course, he's known probably for one thing more than anything else, and that is that it was his home, which was not very far from the place where Lord Caitanya took his birth. His home was where the devotees came and used to perform kirtan in the middle of the night. Now, sometimes it's good to kind of back up and see how this whole thing unfolded. You have, probably of the Panca-Tattva, the oldest is Advaitacharya, who was born in 1410, so he was almost 76 when Lord Caitanya was born, Also, Srivasa was much older. Nityananda was about 12 years older than Lord Caitanya. However, Gadadhar is almost about the same age as Lord Caitanya. So, before Lord Caitanya came, he sent his, various servants and those who would prepare the way for him, So Srivasa was one of those, and Advaitacharya was one of those. So Srivasa, his wife was named Malini, and Malini was later to become friends with Sachimata. And they met at Advaitacharya's place, where Advaitacharya would also explain things about the process of Krishna consciousness. So Malini became good friends with Sachimata. And later on, when Lord Caitanya was actually born, then Malini came and gave gifts. We hear about this in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj. We hear about various gifts that were presented by, Malini Devi to the young Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what's also interesting that, the brothers that Srivasa had, he had 3 or 4 other brothers, Sripati, Sri Ram, Sripati, Sri Nidhi, and some say Nalina. So there were other brothers. They all followed Srivasa when he became converted. And so therefore they also associated with devotees. And just as we see in this dramatic depiction by Kavi Karnapura, that Lord Caitanya, in his early days, was a very kind of self-important wrangling scholar. He did not actually talk about devotional service. He was very, sort of aggressive, and people found him hard to take. And he used to torture Srivasa with questions, and Srivasa would try to get away from him sometimes because he would always ask these kind of pointless Vedic questions that had no relationship to devotional service. And this is interesting, how sometimes people wonder, why did Lord Caitanya spend all these years just as a mundane philosophical wrangler, And there was a time before kirtan was done in public. We'll see that before kirtan was done in public, it was done in secret. And where was it done in secret? In Srivasa's house. That's where it was done in secret. Sometimes called Kol Bungadunga, his Srivasanam, or his place where he stayed. And there his brothers were there, and there, of course, Nityananda would come, Chaitanya would come, so many others would come. But getting back to the episode I was just recounting, Srivasa saw one time Caitanya Mahaprabhu. This was after Caitanya Mahaprabhu had started his, teaching. And so he was giving lectures about Vedic knowledge, and he had a whole group of students around him. And he had just come from the river. His hair was wet. He was wearing gorgeous clothes. He was the flower of youth. He was very attractive, very kind of like lightning and gold and all these things all in one. And so Srivasa felt inspired and came up to him, and he said, which is reminiscent of his own history, So what do you hope to accomplish by all this mundane wrangling? How will this have anything to do to please Krishna? Why don't you give this all up and become a Krishna Bhakta? So this is Srivasa talking to Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu is, actually suddenly becomes changed. And he turns and says, "My dear Srivasa, what you say is certainly true. And you will see one day I will take up the process of Krishna consciousness and I will spread it everywhere." And then he laughed and he went on like nothing had happened. And so Lord Caitanya apparently then met his class that he was instructing, and they went on and they engaged in their regular daily activities, laughing and speaking in, a very superficial way. However, very soon after that, then Caitanya Mahaprabhu went, after the death of his father, Jagannath Mishra, he went to Gaya, and there he connected with Ishvarapuri and became initiated, and then Lord Caitanya completely changed. From that point onward, there was no more wrangling scholar. Now he was actually the avatar of the holy name. And he would bring Krishna consciousness to everyone. So this was the beginning of the spreading of the Yuga Dharma for the age of Kali Yuga, the chanting. But as we said, this chanting did not occur publicly in the beginning. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda, Advaitacharya, and many others, they would meet in secret at Srivasa's home. And in the middle of the night, they would chant and dance. And all kinds of bizarre and mystical things would happen at this evening, get-together where they would chant. And sometimes Nityananda and Chaitanya would jump very high, and when their feet hit the ground, it would appear that an earthquake was happening, or that maybe the earth had collided with another planet, or, their teeth might fall out, or they would break their bones. Sometimes they would appear to float in the air. They would attempt to grab each other's feet, and although they were very quick and very skillful, neither Chaitanya nor Nityananda would ever actually be able to touch the other's foot. They would always escape somehow or other. And no one was allowed in to these midnight sessions in the Srivasangam. Of course, one day, we have the story that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is dancing. And as he's dancing, he thinks, why today we're not feeling ecstasy, he's thinking. Maybe there's some intruder here. And so everybody's curious, and then it comes to be found out that Malini's mother is hidden in the back there. And so when she's removed, then the dancing can be continued. So how would this spreading of the holy name ever happen if it was always in secret? Of course, also in the Srivasangam, there were many other amazing events that happened there, like Lord Nityananda, when he first came, he offered Vyasa Puja to Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Caitanya Mahaprabhu showed his Mahaprakash, his universal form in that place where Srivasa Thakura stayed. In that same location, Lord Caitanya exhibited for the first time, his Sadbhuja form to Nityananda, his form with 6 arms. And also, on the same tone or the same theme as the episode with Malini's mother, or mother-in-law, I'm not sure which it was, one of those two. There was another episode where a young brahmachari heard about this dancing in the middle of the night. And he came to Srivasa and he asked, my dear Srivasa, can you somehow make it possible that I see these amazing things I've heard about Nityananda and Advaita and so many others that come there in the middle of the night. I want to please see this. And Srivasa says, well, I think that we better conceal you. So he's concealed behind a screen. And again, Lord Chaitanya is dancing. But after a short time, Lord Chaitanya stops dancing and he says, why is it that ecstasy does not come to embrace us tonight? I think there must be somebody here. And he says, I have told you that I do not want outsiders here. And I will now destroy you in the entire universe. So Lord Chaitanya makes this amazing statement, and everybody's terrified. And the young boy, he thinks, well, maybe now I am going to be killed, or maybe I will be punished. But what I saw was worth it. If I now have to leave my body as a result of seeing what Lord Caitanya and Nityananda, how they were dancing, how their ecstasy was, how amazing they were chanting, how tears were coming from their eyes, how they would float, how they would perform these pastimes, then it's worth it. And so Lord Caitanya could understand the mood of this young boy. And Srivasa was saying, well, this young boy, he only drinks milk. He was very austere. Then Lord Caitanya, in rage, said, you think you can achieve the Supreme Lord by drinking milk? You can't achieve the Supreme Lord just by drinking milk. And then he tells the boy, do not think that you will achieve the Supreme only by your austerities. Rather, it's through devotion to me one can achieve the Supreme. And then he places his feet on the head of this young brahmachari, and the young brahmachari then also becomes one of those who can come and participate in the nocturnal pastimes of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. On another occasion, there was someone named Gopal Chapala. And Gopal Chapala was envious of the amazing character of Srivasa. So Gopal Chapala decided to defame Srivasa. And he set up a mandapa for worshipping Durga Devi outside of Srivasa Thakura's home. So people would think that actually Srivasa was worshipping Durga Devi. And at that place, at that time, higher class people were Vaishnavas and lower class people were Shakta worshippers. So in this way, he hoped that people would assume that Srivasa Thakura was actually worshipping Durga Devi. So he set all this up. And in the morning, when Srivasa came out, he saw this mandapa for Durga Puja being set up there in front of his house, and he told everybody, just see, I'm calling myself a great Vaishnava, but actually I worship Durga Devi. Please understand my real mentality. Of course, nobody believed it, but Gopal Chapala was stricken then with leprosy. And he became very, very ill, and he had to live outside of the community, because when somebody becomes a leper, they can't, it's infectious disease, so they can't be with everybody else. They have to be quarantined. He was under a tree suffering miserably, and Caitanya Mahaprabhu one time was passing by Gopal Chapala, and Gopal Chapala hailed him and reached out to him, please, Caitanya Mahaprabhu, save me somehow from this disease, I am your surrendered devotee. And Lord Caitanya said, no, you have offended Srivasa Thakura, and for having made this offense, you will suffer like this for millions of births. So Lord Caitanya, instead of being merciful to Gopal Chapala, he redoubled the curse. And so Gopal Chapala had to suffer more time. Later, of course, when Caitanya Mahaprabhu came back from Puri after he'd taken sannyas, he again meets Gopal Chapala. And this time, Lord Caitanya tells him, well, if you get forgiveness from Srivasa Thakura, then I think you can be delivered. And of course, Gopal Chapala, although he was, to some extent, very self-important and very much, egotistic. He had the simple faith, and he did that, and therefore he also became cured, and he also became a follower of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So the final thing that I would like to say is during one of these episodes where they were dancing in the middle of the night and chanting in Srivasa Thakura's home, one of Srivasa Thakura's children died. He had, I think, 5 boys. I don't know if they had girls too, but at any rate, he had 5 boys, and one of them suddenly left his body in the middle of the night during one of the kirtans. And of course, Malini and the other ladies were grieving over the death of the child, and they were crying. This could not be heard in the place where they were performing kirtan, so it was no one knew. But Srivasa went back there, and when he found out what was going on, he gave very important instructions to the ladies. He said, well, why are you all crying? I wish I could die like this, that hearing Caitanya Mahaprabhu's kirtan. We all know that we will all die at some time, so this little boy, our son, has left his body, and though maybe we could think that he was young, still, this was a perfect way to leave his body. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu is dancing. So how could there be anything inauspicious? This is a definition of the most auspicious thing. So please give up your crying, because if you cry and you disturb Caitanya Mahaprabhu's dancing, then I will feel my life is over. And so the way that Srivasa preached, he convinced them that actually there was nothing to be sorry for. And Lord Caitanya continued the kirtan for 9 hours. And so this happened about an hour and a half into his kirtan, but, for 9 hours his kirtan went. And when the kirtan finally broke, I guess in the morning, then Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, why do I feel some sadness in this Sangha tonight? And somebody explained to him how Srivasa's son had left the world. And Lord Caitanya said, how is it that no one told me this? I can't believe. Srivas, you didn't tell me your son had departed. And Srivas said, my dear Lord, we didn't want to disturb your chanting. And how can there be anything wrong with someone departing while you are doing kirtan? So Lord Caitanya went to where the boy's body was. And he called out to the young boy and he said, my dear son, why have you left Srivasa's family untimely in such a way? What possessed you to do this? And the boy began to speak. He came back into the body and he began to speak to the family. And the boy said, my dear Caitanya, you know everything, you are the Supreme Lord, and I have some small desire, but your desire is what carries everything. So for some reason, you gave me the amazing benediction to be able to take birth in this illustrious family of Srivasa Thakura and Malini. I could not have asked for such a benediction, but somehow or other you allowed it to happen. And now that you want me to move to another family or another lifetime, I have no problem with that. But please, wherever I take birth, let me always remember your lotus feet. Let me always become a devotee. Let me always take shelter of whatever devotees I come across. So this little boy is giving this speech, and then when he finishes speaking, then he closes his eyes again and his spirit leaves again, and then Lord Caitanya performs, he brings everybody together and they perform the last rites for the body of the child. And everyone feels very satisfied having, experienced all this. So this is Srivasa Thakura, where he was intimate associate of Lord Caitanya, one of the Panca-Tattva, the Shakti of Narada Muni, and so many other things. So we have a little bit of time left. I'll see if there are any questions. But at any rate, anybody have any questions about this? Do we have the mic? Yeah.
I want to ask two things. One is you mentioned the place of Srivasa Thakura is known as something called
Srivasangam.
Yeah, you mentioned the other name called.
Oh, Kol Bangadanga.
What was the meaning?
Well, that's Kol is of course a mridanga. And Bangadanga is where it was broken. That's another story that happened there, where the Muslim minister, he demanded that the devotees stop chanting the holy name, and he had his soldiers come, and then he broke a mridanga in Srivasa's home, and told them that if they chanted anymore, that there would be serious repercussions, So he made this proclamation. Of course, we know that later on he turns around because he's visited by Nrsingadev, and Nrsingadev tells him that if you break another mridanga like this, that I will do the same with you. And then, of course, I forgot, what was the name of does anybody remember the name of this? What's that? Yeah, Kazi? Chand Kazi. Right, so he made this proclamation. After he was threatened by Nrsingadev, then he said, from this point on, the devotees can chant anywhere out in the street or whatever they want, and none of my men nor any of my descendants will ever interfere with the chanting of the holy name again. So this was another story, and then that's what earned it the reputation, Kol Bangadanga, the place where the mridanga was broken. I believe that's what the Kol Bangadanga means.
Thank you very much. During the class you were mentioning that somehow we perceive both. We perceive the results from our long-term activities. We have a vision, we can kind of see a little bit in the future, but also we see or we desire the result from our immediate activities, generally sense gratification. So how it is that, what is the reason that generally we choose the second one?
Yeah, right. Well, one of them is, as Prabhupada puts it many times, we are in the conditional stage of life, so we're conditioned. It's not natural. In Christian theology, they have this idea of the soul is fundamentally flawed, which is not correct. The soul is fundamentally flawed. Yeah, that it's called original sin. That just being born, we're already in sinful condition. But the idea is that we make our sin. The soul is originally pure, but the soul is habituated to material sense gratification, life after life, gradually digging itself deeper in to a more conditioned consciousness, through our senses and our sense desires. We create karma. Through that karma, we become more attached. We become more involved in more grievous and ugly forms of sense gratification, which create even deeper karma. And so in this way, we are like, just like the paradigm of drug addiction. It works exactly the same way, because drug addiction is just a one specific type of this kind of thing. So as a person engages in material sense gratification, ignoring the Lord, one becomes also unable to pass up sense gratification. So we become more and more addicted. This becomes a pattern. This becomes what's etched into our consciousness as our samskaras. So life after life, we build up these patterns of material desire. We build up these sins, and we build up this karma. So as a result, we are naturally attracted to sense gratification and naturally uninterested in understanding the Supreme Lord, up until the time we get some mercy. And then, at that point we have to catch fire and take off on our own motor, and we have to start engaging in devotional activities of bhakti yoga, and then we can cleanse, and eventually our pure original state of being naturally attracted to the Supreme Lord and unattracted to the material world becomes manifest. And that, that's where we reach the stage of, experiencing a higher taste. So, is that the question that you had? Okay, so any other quick questions anybody has? Yeah.
Maharaj, you mentioned about this, there were three things you mentioned, doxology,
praxeology.
yeah. So they remind me about Sambandha and Prayojana in a sense.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's a little bit different. Sambandha, what is it? Abhideya, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana are the three things that we think of. But these are three things that are types of knowledge. So Sambandha is understanding our position. And then Abhideya is understanding what to do about our position. And Prayojana is what happens when we do it. So as I put it, the first one is understanding the fix we're in. The second one is understanding how to fix the fix we're in. And the third one what happens when we fix the fix. So that's Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. And this is a little different. This is talking about three different ways that devotees express themselves toward the Supreme, through doxology, which is words of praise, praxeology, which is it would be like Sambandha or Abhideya, that's kind of like praxeology. But praxeology also has a broader definition in English as being motivations, not just motivations for the Supreme, but any motivations, why a person does what they do, you know. And then theology is, of course, the theoreticals of who is God, why do we worship Him, what's going on here, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So, thank you all very much for your kind attention. All glories to the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. All glories to Srivasa Thakura and the Panca-Tattva. Panca-Tattva Atmakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Shakti Bhaktikam. Haribo. All right.